Good morning. I am joined today by Director Rohit Chopra of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and U.S. Attorney Alamdar Hamdani of the Southern District of Texas. Today, the Department of Justice and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau filed a lawsuit against Texas-based developer and lender Colony Ridge Development, LLC, and its affiliates for operating an illegal land sales scheme and targeting tens of thousands of Hispanic borrowers with false statements and predatory loans. Our complaint alleges that Colony Ridge's actions violate both the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, two federal civil rights laws that prohibit discrimination in housing and lending. Let me note, this is the first predatory mortgage lending case brought by the Justice Department. The complaint also alleges violations of consumer protection laws, which Director Chopra will provide more information about shortly. The Colony Ridge Development, also known as Terrenos Houston or Terrenos Santa Fe, is northeast of Houston and currently home to more than 40,000 people. The development has a massive geographic footprint, currently spanning across more than 33,000 acres, nearly the same size as Washington, D.C., and it is growing. Our investigation revealed that Colony Ridge operates as a one-stop shop for discriminatory lending. First, it targets Hispanic applicants with false advertising, promising home ownership on properties it claims have basic utilities such as water and electricity. Second, it steers applicants into seller-financed loans, exploiting their limited English proficiency in the process so that it can close the deal. And unlike responsible lenders who conduct a careful determination about whether an applicant can repay a loan, Colony Ridge does not verify income or any ability to pay, knowing that it stands to benefit if the borrower defaults on the loan. After locking families into loans that they can't afford, Colony Ridge then provides them with flood-prone properties. Many borrowers are then forced to sink additional money into making the lots habitable while Colony Ridge stands by, waiting for those homeowners to default on the loans. When borrowers lose their properties to foreclosure, Colony Ridge completes the scam's life cycle by purchasing the properties back for pennies on the dollar and then reselling them at even higher prices to new, unsuspecting borrowers. The impact of this unlawful, discriminatory, and fraudulent scheme is devastating. Nearly 1 out of every 3 Colony Ridge loans fails within 3 years. That is more than 10 times the national rate. And based on Colony Ridge's sheer size and how long it's been in operation, that equates to thousands of Hispanic borrowers who lost their homes because of this scam. We heard from one woman who used the proceeds from selling her mother's home to purchase a Colony Ridge property, only to discover that she would need to spend thousands of dollars to set up infrastructure for basic utilities, despite being told that those services were, quote, ready on the property. Colony Ridge also told her that the property would never flood, but in reality, during heavy rains, flooding is so bad that she cannot get into or out of her neighborhood. It pained her to realize that with all the money she's invested into her Colony Ridge property, she could have afforded a move-in ready home. This lawsuit is a part of the Justice Department's Combating Redlining initiative, and it underscores why equal access to credit on fair terms is so important. Indeed, redlining is one of the major reasons that home ownership scams still have a foothold in our economy today. It leaves vulnerable communities devoid of real credit options and leaves them a perfect target for reverse redlining scams that zero in on these communities with predatory loan products. Through today's action, the Justice Department is making clear that it is equally determined to stamp out predatory lenders who take advantage of the conditions created by redlining, as it is to prevent illegal redlining from happening in the first place. I also want to take a moment and speak to the residents of Colony Ridge. I know that you are hardworking people who are hoping to achieve the American dream of homeownership. Through this lawsuit, we are seeking to compensate those who have suffered losses due to these predatory practices. And for future homeowners who intend to live in this development, our lawsuit seeks to ensure that Colony Ridge delivers on its promises and that it offers a fair process for obtaining loans on transparent terms and a proper assessment of whether you can afford to pay back the loan. In closing, I want to thank our colleagues in the Civil Rights Division, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for their work and efforts. Attorneys and staff have spent countless hours with Colony Ridge residents to gather their first-hand accounts of their experiences. We are committed to working with the community to bring this unlawful scheme to an end. I'll now turn the floor over to my colleague, Director Chopra, to provide more context and information about our historic joint filing.
Well, thank you, Attorney General Clarke. You know, homeownership has long been a path to financial stability for families in our country. And given the shortage of housing today, many families look to borrow to buy land and install or construct a home of their own. And it wasn't long ago that we saw widespread predatory mortgage lending that crashed our economy. The CFPB was created to make sure this never happens again. And today, the CFPB and the Justice Department are bringing charges in federal court against Colony Ridge, a large housing development in Liberty County, Texas. And in 2022, we opened an investigation into the ring of companies selling and financing land lots. And what we uncovered was disturbing. Baiting buyers on TikTok, exploiting language barriers, and targeting borrowers with predatory loans that turned their dreams into absolute nightmares. Our 11-count complaint alleges that Colony Ridge is operating a sophisticated bait-and-switch land sale scheme. And many of these buyers and borrowers end up losing their investment, and they lose the place they hoped to call home. In its Terrenos Houston development, Colony Ridge sells undeveloped lots to buyers, making false representations that they're suitable plots for building homes. And again, through TikTok videos and targeted online ads described in our complaint, Colony Ridge lies to buyers and claims that all its lots have hookups for water, sewer, and electricity. And Colony Ridge implies and sometimes directly tells borrowers the lots have no history of flooding, but the areas are inundated during heavy rains, and that sometimes results in raw sewage overflowing. It isn't just land sales, and like the Assistant AG mentioned, it's predatory lending too. Like some of that predatory mortgage lending we saw in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis, Colony Ridge makes no effort to assess whether a buyer could actually make the monthly mortgage payments. Now, ordinarily, companies don't like to make loans where they expect borrowers to default, but foreclosure is actually a part of Colony Ridge's business. When a family falls behind on payments and loses their property, Colony Ridge buys back the property and flips it to another buyer, often at a higher price. The Assistant AG mentioned this. Foreclosures on lots in the Terrenos Houston development have accounted for more than 92% of all foreclosures recorded in Liberty County between 2017 and 2022. And in a recent 3-year period, Colony Ridge actually flipped over 40% of all the properties it sold. It sold more than 8,000 properties twice, more than 3,000 properties 3 times, and actually more than 2,000 properties 4 or more times in 3 years, again and again and again. The ring of companies running Colony Ridge specifically targets victims based on their national origin and other protected characteristics. So together with the Justice Department, we uncovered facts that suggest this predatory targeting of Hispanic families with set-up-to-fail loans constituted illegal discrimination under fair lending and fair housing statutes. Colony Ridge also specifically employs its tactics in Spanish, but all documents and disclosures are written solely in English. All of this is illegal, violating federal law and regulations that have been on the books for decades. Our lawsuit today highlights several of the CFPB's goals, which we share with the Justice Department. First, we're not going to allow lenders to illegally set borrowers up to fail, particularly in today's housing shortage and interest rate environment. Second, we're closely watching how much fraud is trafficked on large platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube using behavioral targeting. We're fully prepared to use long-standing laws on the books to crack down on this fraud. And this is the first ever federal court action by the CFPB since the agency's establishment to enforce the Interstate Land Sales and Full Disclosure Act of 1968. More broadly, pursuant to the Fair Credit Reporting Act of 1970, we are working on rules to crack down on exploitative uses of personal data, particularly as the use of artificial intelligence and other complex computational models spread. Finally, we're going to continue to prosecute, as the Assistant AG mentioned, illegal discriminatory lending practices, including predatory targeting and redlining. Since 2021, since the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General launched the Combating Redlining Initiative, we've together taken several actions, including the first ever redlining settlement against a non-bank mortgage lender. Last month, we also took action, the CFPB, against Citibank for illegal national origin discrimination against credit card applicants of Armenian descent. Together, we're going to continue to combat the old school illegal discrimination that is still with us, as well as the digital redlining and discrimination of the future. Our lawsuit today is just the first step to stop Colony Ridge from perpetrating this predatory scam against more victims. I really want to thank the Justice Department, the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney for their partnership, and really all of you for caring about this. You know, the stakes of constructing housing are very, very high, and we need to make sure it's not illegal and discriminatory. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over now to U.S. Attorney Hamdani.
Using 21st century social media applications to target and mislead consumers, Colony Ridge set out to exploit something as old as America, an immigrant's dream of owning a home. My name is Alamdar Hamdani, and I am the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Texas. As alleged in the complaint, Colony Ridge's exploitative practice began with misleading advertisements on platforms like TikTok, and often ended with families facing economic ruin, no home, and shattered dreams. Colony Ridge's business plan, as alleged in the complaint, is simple. 1, target the Hispanic immigrant community. 2, make misleading statements in Spanish in online ads to lure immigrants to Colony Ridge's properties. 3, once at a Colony Ridge property, use high-pressure sales tactics, all in Spanish, while misrepresenting or omitting material facts. 4, secure a non-refundable deposit and have the purchaser execute a loan agreement at a high interest rate without doing a credit check. 5, provide a plot of land with no improvements. 6, wait for default and foreclose. And 7, rinse and repeat. The Southern District of Texas covers 44,000 square miles from north of Houston to the southern tip of Texas, and is as diverse as it is large, located in a state whose strength is found in the immigrants who come there in search of a better life. I am one of those immigrants. As the son of a cab driver, I know all too well the struggles of those below the poverty line seeking to realize the American dream. This complaint filed today is a promise from my office to work tirelessly to bring justice for the Hispanic families who fell prey to Colony Ridge's alleged predatory lending practices, and to send out a warning to the vulnerable like my parents. Beware of developers and lenders who use promises of easy financing. They not only will steal your nest eggs, but also your dreams.
Time for a few questions. David?
Can you elaborate in any way what you're seeking in terms of redress? I know at the end of quickly looking at the lawsuit document, it talks about redress for the victims and so on, but is there a number of victims that you're